will have been going before. From globalvillagespace.com, Islamic world should be united against Zionist attacks in Palestine, Turkish president. In phone call, Recep Tayyip Erdogan urges Iranian counterpart Raisi to jointly continue efforts in international platforms to preserve status of holy places. Erdogan and Ibrahim Raisi spoke over the phone and discussed Turkey-Iran relations and regional issues, including Zionist attacks on Al-Aqsa Mosque and the occupied Al-Quds. Turkey's communications directorate said in a statement, emphasizing that common sense should prevail to prevent a new spiral of violence. Erdogan said that it would be beneficial to take initiatives to guide all parties to common sense, calling on Raisi to jointly continue efforts in international platforms, especially in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the UN, to preserve the status of holy places. Erdogan said it's important to demonstrate unity, particularly in the face of recent attacks such as the burning of the Holy Quran in West Asian cities. In a telephone conversation with his Indonesian counterpart, Joko Widodo, on Thursday, Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi denounced Zionist actions at Al-Aqsa Mosque in occupied Al-Quds. Raisi told Widodo that supporting the rights of Palestinians and fighting Zionist-occupied Palestine is an unchangeable principle in the structure of the Islamic Ummah, describing Palestine as a beating heart of the Islamic world. Raisi emphasized the importance of holding an emergency session of the 57-member body of Muslim countries on the prevailing situation in Palestine. He further stressed that the unity of the Islamic world is essential to confront Zionist aggression, while reaffirming Iran's support to efforts at strengthening unity between Islamic countries. The statement further said that Indonesian president welcomed the proposal to convene the special OIC summit and make a joint decision to defend Palestine. Tensions have been running high in East Al-Quds after Zionist forces stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque for the second time on Wednesday after arresting hundreds of Palestinians during the first raid. The raids come as Palestinian Muslims were offering special Ramadan prayers at Al-Aqsa, and Jews were celebrating Passover, which prompted Palestinian groups in Gaza to launch rocket attacks in retaliation. During the second raid on Wednesday, Zionist forces reportedly tossed stun grenades and forced Muslim worshippers to leave. The incidents have drawn widespread condemnation from Muslim countries, with Jordan on Wednesday calling for an extraordinary meeting of the Arab League to discuss the developments. From onlineindia.com, Turkey and Iran call for Muslim unity against Zionist-occupied Palestine. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Iranian counterpart Ibrahim Raisi on Friday discussed in a phone conversation on the escalation of tensions following Zionist-occupied Palestine raids on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Al-Quds earlier this week. Turkey's presidency said in a statement during the conversation, Erdogan underlined the importance of uniting the Islamic world against Zionist-occupied Palestine attacks in Palestine, especially in the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, according to the statement. In order to prevent a new spiral of violence, Erdogan said that it would be beneficial to take initiatives to guide all parties to common sense. He called for joint efforts to preserve the status of holy places, of international platforms, particularly the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the United Nations. For his part, Raisi denounced the crimes committed by Zionist-occupied Palestinians against Palestinians, particularly the attacks on worshippers of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound and the desecration of the holy site. He called for an emergency OIC meeting to discuss measures to deal with the Zionist-occupied Palestine hostility. Raisi also condemned the Zionist entity's recent acts of aggression against Syria and Lebanon. Just a moment. And he stressed the need for greater unity among Muslim states in confronting such actions by Zionist-occupied Palestine. The Iranian president emphasized the necessity of respecting the territorial integrity of regional countries, saying its crucial solution in combating terrorism and separation in the region while supporting the national sovereignty of these states. On Wednesday and Thursday, the Zionist police stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, the third holiest site for Muslims and the most sacred place for Jews, and detained hundreds of Palestinians. Zionist police said in a statement that dozens of law-breaking youths attempted to barricade themselves inside the mosque to incite riots, which is an entirely and completely manipulated untruth. And from Reader, RUETIR.com, Erdogan, Islamic world must unite against Zionist attacks. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called for unity of the Islamic world against Zionist attacks on Palestine. President Turkey Recep Tayyip Erdogan called for the unity of the Muslim world to fight the actions against Palestine or Palestinians in Zionist-occupied Palestine. The Islamic world must unite against Zionist-occupied Palestine's attacks on Palestine, Erdogan told Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi in a telephone call on Friday, a transcript of which was released by the Turkish government. The stance represents a real change for Erdogan, who's led a policy of warming Turkey's ties with Zionist-occupied Palestine. During that time, however, Turkish officials warned that a deterioration in Zionist entity and Palestinian relations would lead to a similar trend in Tel Aviv-Ankara relations. Erdogan stressed that common sense must prevail to prevent a new spiral of violence. Erdogan also asked Raisi to jointly continue efforts on international platforms, especially in the OIC and the UN. Erdogan said it was important to show unity, especially in the face of recent acts such as the burning of Qurans in West Asian cities. The remarks by Erdogan in his office come shortly after the Office of Zionist Foreign Ministry Eli Cohen published its own statement from a phone call he had with Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu, indicating that the Zionists are making progress in convincing Ankara of its position. As part of Foreign Minister Eli Cohen's intensive activities with counterparts in the Middle East and around the world, Minister Cohen spoke today by telephone with Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu to diffuse tensions and send a message to the terror organization Hamas that Israel will respond strongly to continued terrorism and violence, Cohen's office said, as quoted by the Times of Zionist-occupied Palestine Saturday. Hamas is known to have ties to the Turkish government, which has long hosted officials from the group on its territory, and Zionist-occupied Palestine often uses that relationship to convey messages to Hamas. In a message, its counterparts in the Middle East and around the world, Zionist-occupied Palestine will respond strongly to any attempt to harm Zionist citizens. Hamas is responsible for the latest round of escalation on the so-called Temple Mount in Gaza and in Lebanon, and Hamas will pay the price for recent events. Zionist-occupied Palestine is committed to the status quo on the Temple Mount and freedom of worship in Al-Quds for all religions, Cohen's office added. From Al-Mayadeen, Raisi calls for Islamic convergence against Zionist atrocities. Iranian President Raisi on Friday called for a convergence in the Islamic world against the atrocities of the Zionist occupation against Palestinian worshippers at Al-Aqsa Mosque. During a phone call with his Turkish counterpart, Tayyip Erdogan, Raisi slammed the recent Zionist attacks as a desecration of the holy place, while also condemning Zionist aggressions on Syria and Lebanon. The Iranian president reiterated the call for holding an emergency meeting of the Organization of Islamic cooperation to discuss ways to confront the brutal actions of the Zionist occupation. Raisi also stressed the need to respect the territorial integrity of regional countries, pointing out the most important approach to confront terrorism and separatism is to support the national sovereignty of states. On his part, Erdogan underlined the Islamic world should be united against Zionist attacks in Palestine, as per the Turkish presidency's Directorate of Communications. The Turkish president also called on Tehran to continue efforts to preserve the status of holy places, including the Blessed Al-Aqsa Mosque, at international organizations. This comes as on Thursday the Zionist occupation's military said 34 rockets were launched from southern Lebanon and occupied Al-Jalil. The occupation said that the Iron Dome intercepted 25 of the projectiles, adding that at least 5 rockets landed in occupied Palestine lands. The Times of quote-unquote Israel highlighted that the attack may mark the largest number of rockets fired from Lebanon. This coincided with a Zionist occupation aggression against the Gaza Strip, which was followed by a response from the Palestinian resistance. In addition, Al Mayadeen correspondent on early Friday confirmed that 3 Zionist missiles landed south of the city of Tyre, or that could be Tyre, or Tyre. 2 of them in agricultural areas and another in the Kaleile plain.
Tyre.
It's pronounced Tyre. The city is pronounced Tyre. The Israeli occupation military spokesman claimed that the Zionist army attacked Hamas infrastructure and sites in southern Lebanon. And from Memo, Islamic world should be united against Zionist attacks in Palestine, Turkish president. The Islamic world should be united against Zionist attacks in Palestine, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan told his Iranian counterpart on Friday, reports Anadolu agency. Erdogan and Ibrahim Raisi spoke over the phone and discussed Turkey-Iran relations and regional issues, including Zionist attacks on Al-Aqsa Mosque in the occupied Al-Quds, Turkey's communication director said in a statement, emphasizing that common sense should be the prevailing thought to prevent a new spiral of violence. Erdogan said that it would be beneficial to take initiatives to guide all parties to common sense. Calling on Raisi to jointly continue efforts in international platforms, especially in the OIC and the UN, to preserve the status of the holy places, Erdogan said it's important to demonstrate unity, particularly in the face of recent attacks such as the burning of the Quran in European cities. And from TRT World, Erdogan to Raisi, Islamic world should unite against Zionist aggression. In a phone call, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan urges his Iranian counterpart, Ibrahim Raisi, to jointly continue efforts on international platforms to preserve the status of holy places in Palestine. The Islamic world should be united against Israeli attacks in Palestine. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has told his Iranian counterpart. Erdogan and Ibrahim Raisi spoke over the phone on Friday and discussed Turkey-Iran relations and regional issues, including Zionist attacks on Al-Aqsa Mosque in the occupied Al-Quds, Turkey's communications director said in a statement, emphasizing that common sense should prevail to prevent a new spiral of violence. Erdogan said that it would be beneficial to take initiatives to guide all parties to common sense. Calling on Raisi's to jointly continue efforts in international platforms, especially in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the UN, to preserve the status of holy places, Erdogan said it's important to demonstrate unity.
Beam me up, Mr. Spark.